Hello everyone, how are you going? I hope you're doing great. I'm personally doing a lot better than I was in the previous video, basically because my horrible cold that I had is a lot better now. I don't think I'm fully recovered, but it was pretty nasty and I'm very happy it's over. So I thought it would be a good idea to do some book planning today because it's still January, it's still the beginning of the year and I'm still full of motivation for new resolutions and new goals and things that I'm definitely going to achieve all of them this year, and there's not going to be any kind of failure because I don't know the meaning of that word. So I thought today was a very good opportunity to sit down and do a bit of planning for the next book that I want to write this year. It's going to be a short novel and short. In case you don't know me, my name is Marina, and here I like to talk about books and literature and creativity and finding time for your hobbies and your passions that maybe are not your full-time job. Like in my case right now, I don't make a living through writing, but I really love writing and I would love to one day be a published author, but that is, for now, it's a dream, and the reality is that I have obligations like everyone, and so I'm very interested in ideas and techniques and strategies that can help me incorporate these hobbies and these passions into my daily life without disrupting it too much, because like I said, if one day I become a famous best-selling author, that would be great and I won't have to worry about my day job, but for now that's not the case. So what I want to do is find the best, healthiest, nicest ways to be able to still write in my daily life and still do it consistently without going crazy. I don't know how that's going, honestly. I don't know how the sanity department is at the moment, but yeah. So what's the situation today? It's a pretty rainy day, and I think that's great for anything book related. I went to work and now I'm back home and I'm in an unusually great mood, which doesn't always happen. I guess I have good days and bad days like everyone, but can be a bit of a grump sometimes. And today today I'm feeling great. I think it's feeling like a day for studying a new novel. Technically, that's not super accurate because I have been fiddling a bit with the idea of this novel. It's been in my head for more than a year now. And a couple of days ago, I started scribbling some scenes because I felt like it's one of those things that if you don't start it, it will never get started. I know, it sounds stupid, but you get me. Just for a bit of context, I already mentioned this, but I'm not a full-time writer. I'm just a person who has ideas sometimes and then tries to write them down and tries to turn them into big projects that sometimes they get finished and they get edited and then they get sent to agents and publishers, and that's happened a total of 1 unit of times. I have finished one book that goes by Project Tombs, and that one is currently being queried. Crossing my fingers for that one, but I cannot stop my life waiting for success to happen. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to work on more books that I would like to work on and eventually publish. And if you've seen my previous video, I was talking about my goals for this year, and what I would like to do sometime in 2026 is to write a short novel, which is the one that I'm going to plan today, to finish one of the drafts that I've already started with some other projects that I have, and I'm a bit dispersed, and the other goal that I have is to write a children's novel, which is a lot more attainable because they tend to be a lot shorter, or in my case, the one that I'm thinking about will be like a middle grade, so that would also hopefully be a lot shorter than literary fiction or an adult fiction or fantasy for adults or whatever. But none of those things matter for today, because today I'm going to focus in this one project that I was talking about that is, I'm calling it Project Friends, but I don't love that name. It sounds too generic. So I'm going to try, maybe it's one of the things that I can do today, find a better code name for the project, because that one's just not very inspiring to me. It's not very evocative. I think it is the truth. It is a book about a friendship, but I don't know. I would like it to sound like something that you want to work on and something that you want to read. And one more thing for my context, I guess, is that I have long periods of time where I have some time here and there, and then I have other periods of time because of my work where I barely have a second to be able to work on my books. And probably I would be able to find that second if I really tried, but energy also matters and it's also important. And there's just times where my workflow is, the volume of it is just a bit too much, and I unfortunately dropped the projects for a little while. I wish it wasn't like that. I'm going to try and make it more more consistent and more sustainable, maybe reducing it to smaller chunks every day, but it is what it is. Life is complicated sometimes, and I'm not gonna beat myself up for it. That's just the current state of things, and we're just gonna try and work with it instead of against it. And because I think I tend to naturally fall more towards the discovery kind of writer, the ones that basically figure out the story as they're writing it instead of planning it ahead of time. That means that sometimes when I have those periods where I'm not very inspired, I don't have a lot of energy, I've been finding it a lot harder to work on my projects, because it's true that inspiration should find you working, but it's also true that when you're absolutely exhausted mentally, physically, and emotionally, it's very difficult to create. More than anything, when you're so tired that you don't even have time or energy to consume other people's art, I think, and other people's creations, because that definitely dries out your creativity. I think that's what it feels like to me. So even though I still think I'm very much a discovery writer, I will try for this project, especially because I'm thinking about it, I'm conceiving it as a shorter kind of project. Hopefully it stays that way. I'm just so bad at being short, you can already tell. Just as an experiment, I'm going to try and plan this one a little bit more, just to plot a tiny bit. I can't plot too much, because then I'm one of those writers that then feels like the story has already been told and there's no point in me working on it. It doesn't make sense, but it just feels that way. And then it just feels like the work's already been done and there's nothing for you to add to that. So I'm gonna plot very loosely, but I'm gonna try and plot a little bit more than I usually do, so that I don't get stuck in those days and those times that I'm just not feeling it. So if you want to accompany me today, I would love for you to be here. And for now, what I want to do is have lunch, because I'm starving. So let's start with that, and then we'll get on with the planning. Okay, now I have my tea, so all that's left is start with the planning already. Yes, I still have my Christmas tree up, because I think the tradition says to leave it until the 2nd of February. I don't know if it's like that in your country. I've always heard that it's like that here. And in any case, I like it because it's cozy and it takes a little while to put it up. So I don't want to take it, like, I want to keep it for a little longer. It's too hot. Oh my goodness. As a person who doesn't usually plan her novels very much in terms of plot or content or anything, I usually just have an idea or think of a premise and decide to go forward with it. So I just start writing because I've thought of a scene or I thought of a character. Usually it's a scene, and what I do is I develop from there, and it's more similar to creating a scenario and seeing where all of those components will naturally lead you in terms of consequences than predicting, because I find it hard to predict what's going to happen in a story, even if I'm the one inventing it. I know it's weird, but that's just what art and creativity are like. Sometimes it can be a mysterious thing. And so what I want to do this time is not something completely opposite to that, because that has proven to be something that works for me. But I want to decide and to get set on a few aspects about the novel, and these are the ones that I've thought about. The first one is timing. I would like to get the manuscript ready in... I've actually thought about these questions, but I did not take the time to answer them. So we're gonna do that right now. You can be witness of my goal setting, and if I don't meet my expectations or your expectations or my goals or all that, you can come and like tell me off. Please do it, because I need some accountability. I'm gonna be writing everything down in this beautiful notebook that I got as a birthday present from my friends a few years ago, and it's way too pretty to use it, but I decided to just go for it, because otherwise it's just gonna always live on my shelf without being used, and that's not what notebooks were created for. As I was saying, my timing I think should be around 3 to 4 months. Even though I'm trying to be realistic here, I don't want to spend longer than that on draft 1, because I get bored. I get bored really easily, and if something drags along a bit too much, I will start to feel like I shouldn't be working on this project, like I should be working on something else, and that means I will end up abandoning it or leaving it for so long that I am disconnected from it completely. So let's go for 3 months, and if it ends up being 4, that's still gonna be okay. And just to make things more nice and round, I'm going to set February as the studying month, because it's now almost the end of January. That way we can do February, March, April. So this draft should be finished by the end of April. Next point on my list is genre. I've been calling it literary fiction. I think it might be contemporary fiction. I'm not sure. It's about, I don't want to reveal too much because I also don't know too much about it just yet. And I do better when I'm the only person who knows about the story until the story is fully fleshed out. Because I'm very bad at being influenced by other people's opinions when it comes to my project. So this is just a way to protect at least the first version from myself, I guess, because I'm the one that, But I think I would call it, let's go with contemporary fiction. And I think contemporary fiction is not wrong, definitely. And this is a bit of a change because I'm usually full on fantasy. Like, usually what I write has always some speculative elements to it, and I'm not going to commit to avoid that in this, because I might end up somehow managing to like put in there some magical realism or something of the sort, because I know myself and I know that I like things better if there's a bit of magic in them. Next point is length. I want to try and make it a short novel, so I'm going to aim for 80,000 words. I know that's not the shortest that's ever been, but like I said, I usually do fantasy, and fantasy a lot of the time can go over 100,000 words or 120,000 words, and I just don't want to get to that kind of length because I don't think this story calls for that. I think this will work better as a short story, a shorter story, not like as a short story. Oh my goodness, focus. It's also a story that will happen in 2 timelines. So there will be the present and there will be the flashbacks. So I think that's a very good starting point for dividing the novel in the 40,000 words for the present time and 40,000 words for the flashbacks. Next on, we have structure. And I think that's pretty much summarized with what I just said about it being in the present and in flashbacks. And I think the way I'm going to do it is a pretty conventional way of structuring this kind of novels, which would be 1 chapter present, 1 chapter flashback, and I'm just going to combine them, alternating. I think it's fine if in any case it makes sense to do 2 of the same timeline in a row, but I think in general they're just going to be like alternate chapters. Not that any of this is set in stone. If somewhere along the process I change my mind about any of these things, that's totally fine. This is just to give myself a few rules and a little bit of structure, never better, to be able to start developing the project without it feeling like a scary void. It's just some guidelines that you can follow or you can change, but yeah, it's adaptable. And one last point that I wanted to decide on is if I have to do any kind of research. I am not the biggest fan of research because I find it very distracting. So I guess I do really like research, but it kind of pulls me away from the writing. So I end up avoiding it, and I don't think that's good either. So again, what I'm going to try and do this time is to like make it a bit more structured so that I stick to what I should be researching, but I do the necessary research. And in this case, I want to research a couple things, and one of them is toxic relationships, and the other one is grief and the stages of grief, because those are 2 themes that are very interconnected in the story. And the other day, when I was just scribbling some of the scenes that I had in my head, I realized that this was more about grief than I thought at first. And that started giving me a lot of ideas on how to structure it and how to navigate a lot of the scenes that I have been like thinking about. So I think in this case, the research might actually help me a lot with the plot. Okay, so I've written everything that I was talking about on my project notebook, and now what I was thinking about doing is either do a bit of that research that I mentioned, or try and write for like 10 minutes or something like that, just to get started, just to feel a little bit more relaxed about the book and not think about it as this like major thing that is really hard to get started on. It can be a little bit intimidating, especially when you've been thinking about the same project and the same idea for a little while. You've been like toying with it in your head, but you haven't actually started writing. I think it can feel a little bit daunting, and I want to avoid that feeling, because I think once you're in it, it's just, yeah, you wrote yesterday, so you're gonna write today, so you're gonna write tomorrow. And I think getting into that kind of routine and into that kind of dynamic really helps to keep the craft going and to keep it consistent. It took me an embarrassing amount of time to realize that this little guy that I used to do my writing sprints and to time how long I have to boil eggs and stuff like that is actually out of battery. So the timer is not moving. I don't know how long I've been writing. I didn't check the time before I started, and the time was not passing in the panda's little world, so it's impossible to know. I guess we have footage, but I was changing the angle of the camera, so we'll never know. That's pretty good though, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. So stupid. I was wondering what that blinking red light was, and I guess now I know what it is. So despite that issue with the timer, it was a pretty good session, I think. I didn't write very much, but that was not the goal of today. The goal was to plan the novel and the development of the project itself, I guess. And what I did was I did a bit of research, and I wrote down some titles and some interesting things that I learned, but not very much. I only did that for like 10 minutes. And then I immediately decided to write some scenes, like just a short scene or two in this notebook. And then I created my Scrivener file. I actually already had one, but it was a bit messy because it was just the ideas that I had been having and some random scenes that I thought about, I don't know, months ago. So it was not very cohesive. So I decided to create a new one. And I think what I'm going to do is, once I have a bit more of a sense of how it's gonna develop, I'm going to transfer the ones from the old file to this one and probably rewrite them so that they all fit together a bit better. And I think that's all for today. I will keep you updated on how this novel develops and if I manage to keep going with it. And because this one's a bit more of, it's a bit of a grim one. It's not going to be the most cheerful novel. I'm hoping to put some positive messages in it, but overall it's not meant to be like a ray of sunshine. It's a bit more of a, it's about grief. That's why I want to combine it with other projects, specifically with a children's novel that is going to be a lot more lighthearted and a lot happier to work on. So hopefully I can work on both of them at the same time and keep my spirits high even when I have to talk about this topic. I would like to know if you're working on anything right now, you have any idea that you've been thinking of developing, or if you have any thoughts on how I did this process, you have any recommendations or any tips on how to plan a novel, because like I said, I'm more of a pantser or a discovery writer, but I'm always open to learning more about the craft and the process of writing. So I would love to know anything that you want to say in the comments. Thank you for spending the afternoon with me, and I'll see you soon.